Instead of another ad for that shadow journal, how about I tell you a ghost story?
Hi, my name's Chelsea. I see dead people, and I have done this since I was little. And I've decided to start sharing some spooky stories given the season. And honestly, at this point, anything is better than hearing about that damn shadow journal anymore.
Honestly, no hate though. We love a healed bitch.
So I'm sure that you've heard the woman in white trope, right? It feels like anywhere that has like a known haunting ghost, it's always like the woman in white who walks down the hallway. Well, I grew up in a 150-year-old haunted farmhouse, and we had not one, but two ladies in white. And I want to tell you about them. Their names are Sarah and Anna. I'm just going to talk about Sarah today, though, since she's the first one that I've seen, and other people have seen her too. Now, I assume a lot of the stories about women in white come from the theory that when you see a ghost, when it forms in front of you, it typically looks transparent, right? Think of how we draw ghosts. Think of Casper. He's white. I call Sarah a woman in white because she is in a high neck, white lace, late 1800s dress. Very typical, I know. But if it's the time period, and I was able to find evidence to back it up that she even existed in the first place. The first time I saw Sarah, it was like I was, pardon the pun, but chasing a ghost. The way the main floor of the house is set up, it's like one big circle. You can walk from the kitchen to the hallway to the living room to the hallway to the kitchen to the hallway, and you can keep going in a loop. And it felt like every time I would walk into a new room, I would see just the tail end of a woman in a white dress kind of turn the corner. And it was really distinct. There was no way that it was my parents who weren't home at the time, and there was no way it was my sister who was way too little and is not a full-grown woman wearing a white lace dress. And at first, this is kind of how I would see Sarah. I would get this feeling in the back of my shoulder to kind of turn around, and as soon as I turned, there would be like the tail end of someone, right? But I never, for a long time at least, I didn't get to see her. And the crazy thing is that experiences with Sarah never scared me. I had a lot of weird things happen at that house, a lot of things that scared me just naturally from being weird, and I never once was freaked out whenever it was involving her, which I think is really cool. When I lived there, I didn't know that I was a medium. I didn't know that I could see dead people, communicate. I just knew that my house was haunted and weird things were happening and I was seeing really weird stuff. And there were weird moments where I would answer questions that people would ask about it. And like, it was like the answers came out of nowhere. Like, my mom would ask about the woman in white. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's Sarah. That's my ghost mom. I have no reason to know her name. I have no reason to call her a ghost mom. Like, it just kind of came out of my mouth and I was so certain of it. I obviously know now that this has to do with being clairsentient, but you know, I digress. Were always really scared of my house, creepy things that would happen, and it was old, so it made sense that people were scared. And we were playing, and everyone else was found, right? So like everyone else was merging towards like the middle of the room, and they're like, okay, Chelsea, we see you, you can stand up. So I was behind the sitting room, and I stood up, and none of them at me, and so I was like, oh, okay, on me, and then they all screamed. That they found, they were looking at a chair. I wasn't behind the chair, I was behind a couch. So instantly a few of them start rambling. They all said the same thing, and I went for the light, turned the light on, asked them about what they saw. They described very perfectly, and I remember one of my friends saying like, yeah, wearing different clothes. I just think it's funny that like stood out. Changing isn't that weird? And then there was the times plural, that my little sister would see her. My little sister, maybe 3 or 4 at the time, and she had some weird experiences, but she upstairs, right, old house. So I hear her fussing, and I open the door, and I'm like, Willow, like what's going on? And she's in the best way possible explaining like, oh, there's a scary woman, and she's looking room where the stairwell is to go downstairs. And so of course I turn my, and I see through the banister, like just not, she got caught, and then was like nebby. Sorry if you're not from Pittsburgh, that means nosy. But she was a little bit nosy, and she was kind of just like waiting to see like what would happen. Like, are they both gonna see me? I think she probably was also worried that she scared Willow because, again, this spirit always never scared of her. So fast, even freshman year of college, I'm not sure, but I remember telling my parents about Sarah and how anytime I'd come home, I could feel her presence, and it was like she was lovingly yelling at me. So I think it probably was the beginning. And my dad was like, really? And he went into the house for a little bit, came back out, and he had the hand for the house. It was because my grandfather, no one really fussed with it, but it was really old. And so my dad let me scroll and look to see if what I could find. And I don't know if deeds have this now, but back in the day, deeds would have deaths and marriages kind of built into the documentation. And lo and behold, I was able to find Sarah money. What would her clothes have looked like? And I was just able to find validation after validation. To this day, when I go home, I'm typically greeted by either physically seeing her or just feeling the warmth and the welcome home. And the weird thing is that her children are not, and I don't believe her husband is. However, her husband did die in a very mysterious way, basically in laundry detergent. So I don't know why she's still hanging around the house, but I'm happy she is. And I'd be completely okay if she wanted to move on, but I'm never going to kick her out. Now that it's a month of October, it's a really good excuse for me to actually stick with it and tell these stories, because every time I start to, they are. But yeah, if you enjoyed hearing about Sarah and you are interested in hearing things that I've seen, let me know. You to share this, because I love a good story time. And we still need to talk about the second woman in white, because remember, there were two.